How would Jonathan reveal to David the intentions of Saul? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Samuel on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Samuel chapter 20, verses 17 to 29. Before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 17. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Samuel chapter 20, beginning of verse 17. Now Jonathan again caused David to vow because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. Then Jonathan said to David, "Tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be missed, because your seat will be empty. And when you have stayed 3 days, go down quickly and come to the place where you hid on the day of the deed, and remain by the stone Ezel. Then I will shoot 3 arrows to the side, as though I shot at a target. And there I will send a lad, saying, 'Go find the arrows.' If I expressly say to the lad, 'Look, the arrows are on this side of you. Get them and come.' Then, as the Lord lives, there is safety for you and no harm. But if I say thus to the young man, 'Look, the arrows are beyond you,' go your way, for the Lord has sent you away. And as for the matter which you and I have spoken of, indeed the Lord be between you and me forever." Then David hid in the field, and when the new moon had come, the king sat down to eat the feast. Now the king sat on his seat, as at other times, on a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side. But David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul did not say anything that day, for he thought, "Something has happened to him. He is unclean. Surely he is unclean." And it happened the next day, the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said to Jonathan his son, "Why has the son of Jesse not come to eat, either yesterday or today?" So Jonathan answered Saul, "David earnestly asked permission of me to go to Bethlehem. And he said, 'Please let me go, for our family has a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to be there. And now, if I have found favor in your eyes, please let me go away and see my brothers.' Therefore he has not come to the king's table." In our last lesson, we had David running from Saul. Originally, David was in Ramah, where Samuel was, but he wasn't safe from Saul there, so he fled to find Jonathan in order to inquire more about the situation. During that meeting, they devised a test of Saul's intentions at the new moon feast that began the next day, a feast David was expected to attend with Saul. David told Jonathan to say that his absence was due to David asking permission to go to Bethlehem to attend a yearly sacrifice there. Now, David had asked permission, so that was truthful. He didn't tell Jonathan to say that he had left for Bethlehem, for that would have been a lie. If Saul responded positively, then David would know that he was safe. However, if Saul responded negatively, then David would know he was in danger. Along with this plan, David and Jonathan made a covenant that no matter what happened, David would always show kindness to Jonathan and his house after him, lest the Lord bring tragedy upon David at the hands of his enemies. Coming now to verse 17, there had to be a way for David to find out the results of the test. Jonathan could simply come directly and tell him, but if Saul sought to kill David, surely Saul would send people to follow Jonathan in order to find David. Instead, David was to go into hiding, and then after 3 days remain in hiding by the stone Ezel, a place we do not know the location of, but probably the same place David hid in chapter 19. Jonathan would then come to the said field, but not meet David directly. He would instead shoot 3 arrows as if he was shooting them at a target. He would tell the lad with him to go and find the arrows, and then expressly says, Look, the arrows on this side of you. Get them and come." Then David was to know that David was safe and there was no harm. However, if Jonathan said to the lad, "Look, the arrows are beyond you," then David was to flee, for the Lord had sent him away. Creating a code like this would lessen the risk of anybody becoming the wiser of Jonathan's actions. It would prevent Saul from finding David should he have sent people to follow Jonathan, and it would help protect Jonathan of being suspected of aiding David should Saul seek to harm David. And so it was, when the festival came, Saul's family came together for the feast, including Abner, Saul's cousin and commander of the army. David's chair was empty, though. On the first night of the feast, Saul didn't think anything of David being absent, for perhaps he was unclean under the law. If you recall from Leviticus, a whole host of reasons could make one unclean under the law, and so Saul thought nothing of David's absence, because being unclean usually meant that you were unclean until evening, and would then resume daily life the next day. However, when David didn't show up for the second day of the feast, that is when Saul sought an explanation, and it is at that time that Jonathan presented David's excuse in order to test Saul. What would Saul's response be? We'll find out, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Samuel chapter 20, verses 30 to 42, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.